Hey everybody, this is Shane Wallace. I'm a canyoneering guide and instructor based out of Highland, Utah. I teach courses for beginners all the way through advanced canyoneers with advanced anchors and pothole escapes as being some of the things that I teach. What I want to focus on today is stacking pot shots as an anchor. It's something that I teach in one of my advanced courses, and I just haven't seen a video that really explains the concept and shows the pot shots being pulled the way that I would prefer them to be pulled. So we're going to stack some pot shots today, and we're going to talk about how they're stacked and how they should be pulled. So let's talk about pot shot construction first of all. Unfortunately, Canyon Works doesn't make these pot shots anymore, but they are my favorite pot shot so far. One of the things that I really like about them the most is this reinforced end right here that allows me to attach a rope to it as a rated connection to hold my body weight. Something that you can also tell about that is it's connected to this strap that comes all the way to the handle. Some pot shots will just have they'll have a piece like this as part of the construction, but it's not a rated connection, and it's just a piece of strap that's stitched on both sides. I'll still use those, but I'll use them a little bit different configuration. I can put a rope on the handle side and pull, and it will hold and be rated for the same amount of weight as the back side like this. Some pot shots are not built that way, and if they're not, you're going to be strictly using just the handles. So I'll always carry a shovel like this when I'm going into a canyon and I know I'm going to be filling on pot shots. But if you happen to carry a little dump truck with you, just bring the dump truck over. Fill your pot shots up that way, it's a lot faster. So when you're in a canyon, these pot shots are going to be stacked up against possibly a lip or another rock, but it's kind of outside the scope of what I'm trying to talk about today. I'm more focusing on stacking them and the way that I like to see them pulled. So if I just take these pot shots and my direction of pull is toward the camera, I'm just going to take the first one and stack it up like this, and I'm going to stack the rest of them the same way. They're surprisingly stable when they're stacked on top of each other. The terrain can dictate if you're going to use a pot shot stack like this versus a sand trap, sometimes a water anchor, some of the different options we have with the advanced anchors that are out there. But focusing on the pot shot stack, I'm going to start by stacking them up just like that. I want to reiterate that the purpose of this video is discussing how they're stacked and how they're pulled. But something that we go into great detail in the advanced anchor course is the proper sequencing. Who goes first, who goes last, how much an anchor like this might be able to hold. In addition to the individual weights of each of the pot shots full of sand, is the sand wet, is the sand dry? Do I have a lot of friction with the rope simply going over the edge? Because if I have a lot of rope on rock friction, that takes some of the load off of the anchor, in addition to making proper starts on advanced anchors. So all of that stuff is beyond the scope of this video. I'm just talking about stacking them and pulling them. Now we're going to talk about attaching the rope and getting ready to use these stacked pot shots as a rappel anchor. So for the purpose of this video, the rope that's already out on the ground represents the rappel strand, and that we have been able to verify that it's in fact on the ground, which is part of the advanced skill because we're not rigging releasable with this type of anchor. So verifying the rope has hit the ground is extremely important. And if we can't verify it, there are other things that we need to do, but we're not going to talk about that right now because we're just focusing on how to stack these pot shots and how to pull them. All right, so the first carabiner goes into the bottom pot shot. All of the load is on top of that particular pot shot, and we're just going to tie a simple clove hitch Connect it there. Make sure we've got a good tight clove hitch. If you pull on each strand separately, you'll make sure that you haven't tied a munter hitch by mistake. And then we're going to tie each one of these pot shots in the backwards order, because we want to pull this one off first. We're going to connect to this one second, this one third, and this one fourth. And I like to create what's called a jumper, which is just a length of rope from this carabiner out to the bag. The jumper needs to be the distance that allows me to pull off each individual pot shot without pulling on the second one before the first one has gone over the edge. So sometimes that's a couple feet, sometimes that's more than that. We're gonna go with probably about 5 feet. Connect here. Take about another 5 feet for the next jumper. And the last jumper. And I like to organize these jumpers so that they're laying next to the bag or by the bag. You could alternate each side if you want. Just want to make sure that when we pull these, we want to try to avoid them getting tangled with each other, something like that. So this stack of pot shots is ready to rappel off of, with the requirement that we need to back this anchor up. Again, that's part of this process that we're not going to cover. But backing up advanced anchors, sometimes referred to as marginal anchors, is something you absolutely have to do. So in addition to backing up the anchor for the people that rappel, there's also a sequencing factor that comes into play. In general, the basic idea of sequencing is that the lightest person, who's also a skilled, competent rappeller in our group, is going to go last. So typically the second to the last person down will rappel down with the bag. Throwing the bag down is an option as well. It's just really good if you have that plan figured out with your team before it happens, and so that the last person down only has to focus on their rappel. Sometimes what I see is, and the reason why I made this video is because the pot shots have the carabiners attached to the handles back here, so that the pot shot is pulled. If the area that the pot shots are stacked is really constricted or really tight, the pot shot, if the carabiner is connected back here, it doesn't flip over like this. It's more than likely going to spin, and when it spins, it's going to hit the wall and it's going to wedge itself in there and get stuck. So I have not seen a video where the connections are made out here. If you want to put the handles out here, I'm okay with that. Because of the way these pot shots are constructed, the way that I like to pull them, as I pull them, the sand empties out of the back. If the sand's wet, then I would consider loosening these drawstrings a little bit, so the sand would fall out when they're pulled, but the sand stays in while they're stacked. Right now there's hardly any sand coming out of the back and the sand is really dry. So the last person has rappelled and we're ready to do the pull. I'm gonna move out of the frame and show you what the pull might look like. Notice how the pot shots come straight off. That's the one thing that I like the most about pulling these away. Whether you're gonna pull them the bottom first or the handles first, just pull them straight out this way instead of rigging everything to the back counting on everything that's going to spin when it may not, to actually empty the bags and pull the anchor down. So if I pull this, first pot shot would come off. And by the time it gets to the edge, it could potentially hang in the air with the sand emptying out. The second one, same thing, nice and straight, flat coming off there. No carabiners in the back requiring the bags to spin. The next one comes off as well. And the last one, I'm gonna pull, and it's gonna come down and slide off the edge. So remember, when you're pulling the rope or pulling the bags off, or when you're just pulling your rope down from an anchor in general, if you can pull from down canyon and changing the angle to look like this, pulling the rope, pulling the anchor will be much easier. You won't be burning or scarring the rock with your rope, and the pull will be much easier. The last thing I want to do is reiterate that this is an advanced skill. These are advanced anchors. I don't want you going out and trying this in your canyon tomorrow because you watched this video today and thought, all right, I've got it down, because there are a lot of other things that go into just stacking the pot shots. I wanted to just make this video to show how I like to stack them and how I like them to be pulled so that it's clean and effortless and results in a good anchor that is easily retrieved. Thanks for watching.